I received a call yesterday that there was a warrant out for my arrest.
Business is messy and unpredictable.
Sometimes lonely.
So lonely.
So lonely.
And inspiration can often come from really weird places.
We pick up where the bullet point blogs and the highlight reels leave off.
We start with the stories.
So here's my story. I received a call yesterday that there was a warrant out for my arrest.
Wait, are you serious?
Yeah.
You're not making this up, just to be
No, I'm not making this up.
Okay, proceed.
And to be honest, I'd received calls like this before, and maybe if other people among our listening community had bothered to actually answer the phone, at times they received calls like this before, because it was from a gentleman who told me that he was an agent with the Social Security Administration and that my Social Security number had been flagged for several felonies, apparently. And now, I actually don't view these calls as nuisances. I love these calls because I like to see...
You mess with them, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I like to see how far I can take this because I want to know what the end game is. And I have a whole nother story about taking it to the point where I actually got blocked by the organization that was calling me. But that's not this story. So yesterday I got called and I wasn't really feeling all that energetic. It was just a long day and I had that, but I still wanted to talk to them, but my heart wasn't in it anyway. So they told me that my Social Security number had been flagged for some felonies in Texas. And
Texas felonies.
Texas felonies.
Wow.
And he had been going on about this a little bit. And I finally said, because I just decided I didn't want to keep playing it. And I said, I got to tell you, I can't continue with this conversation. You're not even really that good at this. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, there are a number of issues with it, but really, first of all,
you're a bad scammer.
If I had been flagged for felonies in Texas, it wouldn't be the Social Security Administration felony. The Social Security Administration doesn't have police. There are no agents. I think I would have other people.
Get your scam in order, buddy.
Yeah, tracking me down. I just think the whole thing is ridiculous. It doesn't make sense. Now, at this point, because I've had a number of these phone calls before, if I finally give it up and just express frustration, they hang up on me.
Right.
But this guy didn't. He said to me when I finished this rant, he goes, that's what I thought.
Oh, no.
And then he said, but they don't listen to me. And then he hung up. So I sat back right after that call, and I want to do the same thing here because I needed to take a moment to unpack this. Because what I took from this was that this particular gentleman had no problem at all with the moral issue of trying to scam mostly elderly people out of their money. Right. But it was bad leadership that really was getting his goat. Because it was that frustration and the demoralization and just the sheer fatigue.
Right.
That was in, they don't listen to me.
Nobody listens. Oh my God. I love this so much. And I just want to back up very quickly because people often ask us if we script this show or that and we don't. And occasionally we'll bounce the idea off each other before we start recording, just if we're not sure. But a lot of times you're like, I have a story. We'll see where it goes. And that's what we did this morning. But I want to say that what you said was, I have an okay story. And we'll see where it goes. And I am literally crying with laughter because this cracks me up. The other thing I love about this is it reminds me a tiny bit of the episode that we did on the used panty industry that, which by the way, if you haven't heard that episode, I will in a minute at some point today tell you how you can get a copy of that because it's not one that's published on podcasts on the, like iTunes and whatnot. Yeah. But similarly, the reason that I loved the used panty industry story was the recognition that it's an industry, that there are rules and well, not necessarily rules, but best practices and all sorts of structures that you imagine just being this amorphous thing. And I certainly have always thought of the scamming, air quotes, industry as this amorphous thing. But this sort of pulls that layer back to say, even the scamming industry has leadership issues and personnel.
Well, they do. I'll tell you one other thing that, the people that do the malware, if you've ever gotten this, and I have years ago, where it says we've infected your hard drive unless you pay us X number of dollars, we'll whatever. They actually have a customer service number. Yeah, they do. They do. And it's legitimately answered because they will help you make your payment to them. It's an extortion payment.
Right.
But they will literally help you make your payment to them because they are running a real business. It's based on a scam. It's based on worse than that. It's malicious and felonious. But they do have the rules of business, just as I believe that the scammer I was talking to, they probably have they probably put real time and effort into the script that he had to use. Because when he said they don't listen to me, he may have been trying to change the script and they're like, no, we got this.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a perfect thing. So now let's back up. You're not, even if they had aligned the story in a way that was more believable, you weren't going to fall for it. But and you did point out they're mostly targeting the elderly, which I'm going to skip right over the fact that you're getting these calls, and I don't currently yet get these calls.
I got it at work.
Do you see how I skipped it right over it?
I appreciate the fact that you didn't even bother to mention that.
Yeah, I didn't. Because that's the kind of person that I am. I didn't even point out the decade in between our exactly a decade for anyone who doesn't know this, because we have the same birth date of September 1st, but 10 years apart. So. But I lovingly skipped over that.
Thank you.
My in-laws, though, get these calls and mailings and other kind of things to such a degree that we are constantly battling the scams, constantly, because they are actually very well put together and very convincing, to the point that the last time he got one of these calls, there were people on speakerphone, as it was like a publisher's clearinghouse kind of scam, and that he just needed to go get these things. And my father-in-law did do the first step of it. And the next day he got a very elaborate fruit basket from these people with like, congratulations on your win. And even though we had known already that it was a scam at that point, my father-in-law said, maybe it is real because we got this fruit basket. Maybe I am going to get this money. So what's interesting to me about that is that this thing that you're pointing at, where some new employee probably doesn't have experience in the industry, didn't train, isn't the head honcho, whatever, has input that could improve your process to the point where more people will fall for it, and you blow them off.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't have fallen for it, but if that story was a tiny bit tighter, a higher percentage of people would fall for it because it sounded reasonable. It added a layer of a fruit basket or some kind of credibility to it. But yeah, warrants in Texas and the Social Security office don't make any sense.
Yeah, but the at some point leadership decided that their conversion rate, for lack of a better term, whatever their end game is, which had to involve getting money somehow to clear this up or to pay fines. I'm not exactly sure how they connect those dots, but they decided their conversion rate was good enough.
Well, and that actually does bring up another point that's probably not helpful in our trying to map this to something useful versus just being a really fun story to tell, which is it's also possible that they have found through testing that, beta testing and split A/B testing, that having a confusing story increases their conversion rate, because people can't say, well, I'm going to call the Texas, or I'm going to call this, because the story, they're so confused that they become more apt to just do whatever you say because they can't find their own logic in how to fix the situation.
But here's the thing, though, because let's assume that that's true.
Okay.
Let's assume that they decided through A/B testing and various other trials, that the confusing story was the way to go. They did not communicate to this worker
Yes.
that there was a rationale for doing it this way. In fact, instead, he felt not that they just overruled his idea on the merits,
Right.
but that they didn't care about his idea in the first place.
Oh, that's so right. Yeah, because just because somebody throws you an idea doesn't mean you have to say, "Why, yes, Kevin, we will." Kevin, who's 21 and hasn't even finished college, yes, we will take your advice and completely change our plan. But they could have said, "No, here's why." You actually want them confused. When they're confused, they're much more likely to say yes. In fact, if you can throw in another confusing detail, that's the one way you can mess with the script or whatever. For all I know, because it reminds me of a company I was reading an article about who by accident discovered that like freebie thing to get an email magnet on a website to give us your email and we'll send you an ebook or whatever.
Right.
By accident, they discovered that if you did some sort of like coming soon or pre-order or like get notified when, so there actually is nothing you're giving them for their email. It's just the anticipatory, like get on the list to get the thing when it's available, converted at a much higher rate than actually having a thing, which was just a fascinating kind of brain whatever. But but explaining that to somebody so that they have more of a solid ground in what they're doing. And I love this story because I've laughed an extraordinary amount already, but I also love it because of what it kind of surfaces. I have done a few weeks ago, I participated in a retreat that was both the board of a large organization as well as the leadership team of that organization. And there were a few opportunities for them to talk back and forth, but some of it came from, but like at the end. So the board did all this deciding and then it was kind of like, here's what we thought. And I really wish that I had a little bit more input earlier, although I think I would have noticed that. I don't know if maybe I would have missed it too, but to have them be a little bit more of the process along the way. Because if you just have leadership sort of walking in and being like, here's the answers to all the questions,
right,
and you don't get enough of a grounding in how they got there, then the person who's trying to go implement your directions doesn't have that internal GPS of what's the general guidance here. They have to look at you for every step. They're like, is this what you're looking for? Is this warmer, colder, warmer, colder? Because I don't know what we're actually aiming for here. So I have to I have to look to you for every little move or something. And it sort of feels like that to me.
Yeah, it's the value of explaining the context. And then how much do you care if 21-year-old Kevin knows? Or do you just tell them at what point, if any, do you say, just be a good soldier and do what we tell you to do? It depends on the organization and what your company culture is. And I did want to mention another thing when you talk about business rules, because this has nothing to do with the ultimate point, but it does.
Don't let that stop you.
No, because it brings to mind that I bet there is this undiscovered niche of being the coach or facilitator to really make scamming companies better, to get them in a group, have an industry conference, best practices. Sure. They can commiserate with each other. Everybody thinks we're just scamming the elderly, but they don't recognize the craft, So I think that I'm curious of what those trade conferences are like.
Yeah, that would be very interesting. I do have to say, like, all jokes aside, what kind of special place in hell are you trying to reserve for yourself when you scam the elderly and people who? I mean, I do not understand.
I don't know how you look at yourself in the mirror. And what does a good day look like? Does a good day say, hey, I came out, it was a great day. How was your day, honey? Well, yeah. I got this, 84-year-old to give up her life savings. So it went really well. I don't know what that looks like.
You're not wrong though in like their industry is insipid, but they do have very good marketing and conversion techniques. And I've thought about this. I looked to this group that did scam my father-in-law out of $3,000. We were able to recover $2,000 of the $3,000 by a stroke of luck.
Was this the home repair one?
No, this was essentially you've won like Publishers Clearinghouse and you're going to get this Mercedes. All we need you to do is buy $3,000 in gift cards and read us off the numbers off the front. Okay. Now, hysterically, hysterically, my father-in-law has an incredibly thick Scottish accent. So I do enjoy imagining listening to him trying to read them off to the person and the person like having to be like, I'm sorry, can you say that again? Like, I don't understand. So there was that. Fantastically, a cop ended up getting involved because my father-in-law went to a bank later and we were able to recover because they had not, we were able to get the big ones. There were like $500 ones. This is a tangent. I'm actually going to skip that part of the story. What is impressive about it is that they have continued to come back to try and take another dip.
Keep calling them.
They keep calling, but here's the fascinating thing. They tried calling just to double down on the prizes, like, sorry, there was a miscommunication, like that kind of thing. That didn't work. Now they have tried to come in as solutions to the same thing. So like, we're going to protect your account from these kinds of things happening. Yeah. We just need your account number so that we can protect you from this or that. And it makes me hate them. But if you can step back and sort of fuzzy focus, look at if you have an objective, not being daunted by an obstacle and finding other ways to communicate with people and other ways to make your point. I mean, it's a gross version of it, but there are lessons to be learned there and then applied, use your power for good kind of thing. But if I'd known this is what we were talking about, I would have actually thought about all the, to catalog all the ways that they have tried to get back into his system.
But, it's interesting because my mother has also received calls about, let's protect your account and we can do this. And one of the interesting things about it is that the recipients of these calls, such as my mother, I think it's a function of age or could be generation or whatever it is, but it's very hard for her to believe that somebody would not actually be trying to help her.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a natural tendency to assume that other people have the same general set of values you do. And so to take the leap and say that my worldview is not universally shared takes a higher level of executive function that I think makes the elderly a perfect target for this. And a lot of these scams do prey on either fear. Well, they definitely prey on fear. One is we're going to have an agent at your door in 15 minutes unless you do whatever you have to do. And the other is the other people are trying to get you unless you give us your account number so we can protect you.
Right. Fear and also confusion. I mean, because they just don't understand like how certain things work. And it's terrifying to imagine what I will have to comprehend when I'm 80, technologically speaking, and there's different things that you have to take in. So there's a lot of opening for things being confusing. And I think that it just reminded me, have you seen the video of the guy who, and I don't know if it's real or not, but he's messing with the South African person about, I think it's South Africa, whatever, the toaster.
Oh yeah.
Have you seen that? No. I love that story. I think I could just imagine that guy's voice and I start laughing. But there is an interesting conversation there around like the role of, because normally we say the confused mind says no. Like I forget where I heard that first, but that if you are trying to get somebody to do something, that confusing them will just make them like walk off and do something else. But you know what? I completely lost my train of thought just now. Speaking of a confused mind, I don't know where I was going with that.
But the confused mind says no. It's like I can't remember what it was, but the problem with choice. If you have 19 choices in a grocery store, you'll just walk away. If you have 2, you might, whatever. But see, they're not creating a confused mind necessarily because they are crystal clear on one thing, and that is you've got a major problem. They're just confusing you as to the alternatives to dealing with it other than using these scammers as the lifeline.
Well, right. Well, they create this confusing, scary world, and then they give you one very clear door out.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, thank you. That's not where I was going, but I'm going to pretend that's where I was going because then it makes it all make sense where I was headed with that.
Okay, but you're lousy at pretending when you say those things.
Yeah, I am. I'm not known for my poker face. Like you can be, you cannot be confusing about the path with which you want people to walk through, whether it's an employee, which gets back to your point. Like the guy was like, this doesn't make sense. So I can't even defend. Like when if he understood and wasn't confused about why this was the scam, he could have actually potentially had some kind of retort to your comment. This doesn't make sense. Because then if he had any kind of internal GPS about it, he could have defended that and possibly, if you weren't you, convinced you to continue to talk and consider it. But he couldn't because there was confusion about that part versus there cannot be confusion about how, like what you want someone to do. It's one of our very first episodes was like, make it easy for people to do what you want them to do. So it feels very similar to that.
Yeah. I mean, had he been armed with the second answer, he could have said, well, I understand why you're saying this, but in interstate problems, what they flag first is social security number because it takes 15 business days to get fingerprints to go across, or, whatever. And, he could have a rationale. What he was left with was the frustration of no rationale, which, and I think that's probably because he's in an industry with a very high turnover. I don't think.
I would presume so.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I don't want to give the impression that I was trying to give leadership training so that they could be better at scamming the elderly.
But if they're listening, they've just gotten some. So
right. But and you know what? What's interesting, if they're listening, they probably would be reluctant to give us feedback because they really don't like it when you can call them back or whatever. And they probably don't have Facebook profiles. And they probably would be reluctant to text us, which is our newest way of reaching us.
Oh, I was wondering where you were going with this, which is really funny since I'm the one who brought this to the table today. Yay me. So why, yes, Elliot, we do have a way for you to text us.
That could have been so much smoother. I'm just going to go on record to say that if you sometimes employ your internal voice, it could be so much smoother.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I appreciate that. And I take that feedback sincerely. So here's the news. 2 things we have not mentioned today. This is our 200th episode.
Yes, it is.
200th episode. And if Elliot and I were a little bit more organized and had seen that coming, which the fact that we didn't is hysterical since they're literally numbered. So as I put them in the thing,
possibly see that coming. It's not like there's any way to tell that's imminent.
Yeah, I don't know how when 5 weeks ago it was 195. We didn't think about it, but this is our 200th episode. And there's another thing we've been thinking about doing for a while anyway. So it seemed like a great time to roll it out, which is that we have a way now, in addition to joining the conversation in the Facebook group, which some people have, as I told Elliot, I get a couple messages a week from people like on Facebook or other places who say, on LinkedIn, who say, I'm not on Facebook, so I'm not joining the group. I just wanted to reach out and say hi. A woman just reached out. She's been listening since episode 17.
Wow.
And we hadn't heard from her. So actually she had joined the Facebook group since then. But so you can text us at 410-632-6894. And I'll repeat that again in a second. But you can text us. And there is one little step you have to do to add yourself to the community, which is the program that allows us to be able to do this. You just have to, you click a link, it'll take you through and just hit OK or add or whatever. And then you will be able to text with us. You can, at this point, we don't have any plans to send you like texts about weekly episodes and things like that. This is purely a way to converse with Elliot and I. We'll both have access to it. So you text, it'll be just like for you, it will just be like texting any old person. So that means if you're listening to an episode and you have a thought, you can text it to us. And the other reason we did this was the number of people who tell us that they feel like they're at a table with us, that it's a 3-way conversation, and some of them even talk to us. And we want to hear those things. So that's a new way that you can get there. There are also, it's not the easiest number to remember. I was really bummed that there's literally almost nothing that these particular numbers can spell. So I was really hoping for some campy like 410, I don't know, cow sneeze or something. But that's not happening. And 410-632-6894 is a little hard to remember. But if you go to our website, there's a link at the top that says text us. Below there's a link. And if you're on your phone, that'll take you straight to your SMS and make it super simple. So we would love to hear from as many of you as possible, because it's our 200th episode. And that's how you can give us a gift.
That is, and I will tell you that that ties directly into the story, because unlike, yes, it does.
Let me hear it.
I will tell you, because unlike the leadership of that scamming company, that doesn't really care what their people have to say.
Oh,
We deeply care what our people have to say.
Wow. I'm impressed.
I know.
I think we should just end there. That was really good.
Thank you.
I will repeat the number one more time in case you want to text us and jump on, because we might actually do some sort of like drawing for whiskey glasses or something fun. We say we are going to do that. We might not. But it depends on how many people jump on the program. So it's 410-632-6894. And do make sure you do the second step or we won't ever get your message. So see you there.
So that's our story.
But the discussion doesn't have to end here.
No, it does not.
In fact, we don't want it to.
No, we don't.
That is why we actually have our private Facebook group,
Which we started to make sure that we could get your comments, your rants, your thoughts.
your stories.
Your stories.
You can find links to that group as well as show notes and links to subscribe via email and how to find us just about anywhere you can possibly find podcasts at sohere'smystory.com.
And you can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at SHMS Podcast.
And since we know it takes a village,
Yes, it does.
we'd like to thank our village, our super talented, incredibly patient team.
And occasionally snarky
Ooh,
team.
yeah, but in the best of ways.
In the best of
Lovingly
ways.
Snarky.
Yes.
Good mockery.
So a huge shout out to the people who actually help us produce our show. First, our sound engineer, Tom Hansen.
Thanks to Christy Schmier for our brilliant show notes and all the other fantastic writing she does for us.
And to Taylor Mathauer for doing just a little bit of everything.
Including wrangling us,
Including wrangling us.
which is no small feat.
No, it's not.
This is Jody Hume,
And I'm Elliot Wagenheim.
and you've been listening to So Here's My Story.